You're not emotionally cold. You're strategically unavailable in the exact moments that feel unsafe. What you call detachment is not indifference. It is regulation. It is a nervous system that learned, often very early, that closeness carries risk. So instead of leaning in, you lean back. Instead of reacting, you neutralize. Instead of expressing, you analyze. And the world mistakes that restraint for coldness because it cannot see the system running underneath it. Your behavior isn't random, it's patterned. When connection begins to deepen, your threat detection system activates before your conscious mind does. The shift is subtle. Your tone flattens, your responses shorten, your body tightens. You feel the impulse to withdraw, to delay replying, to intellectualize instead of reveal. This is not personality, it is conditioning. Specifically, it is attachment conditioning, reinforced by repeated experiences where vulnerability did not feel safe. The human nervous system prioritizes survival over intimacy. According to research in affective neuroscience, the brain's threat circuitry processes relational danger faster than logical reasoning. Long before you think, you react. If at any point in your development closeness was associated with criticism, unpredictability, emotional neglect, or betrayal, your brain encoded a simple rule: proximity equals potential pain. That rule still runs in the background. You likely don't experience it as fear, you experience it as clarity. You tell yourself you're just independent, you prefer space, you don't need constant reassurance, you're low maintenance. But beneath that narrative is a sophisticated avoidance strategy designed to preserve identity and minimize exposure. Your nervous system would rather sacrifice intensity than risk destabilization. Here's what most people misunderstand. Emotional shutdown is not the absence of feeling, it is the suppression of expression. The internal experience may still be rich, but it remains contained. Think of it like a high-voltage electrical system with a circuit breaker installed. When emotional current spikes too high, the breaker flips. Everything goes quiet. Not because there's no power, but because the system is preventing overload. This is where it gets interesting. The very trait you've been criticized for might be the reason you survived certain environments intact. Emotional restraint can be an adaptive response to chaos. If you grew up around volatility, being the calm one kept you stable. If affection was inconsistent, needing less became efficient. If conflict escalated quickly, staying neutral kept you safe. Over time, that adaptation crystallized into identity. You didn't just act controlled, you became controlled. There's a cognitive bias reinforcing this pattern, confirmation bias. Every time someone calls you distant, you mentally log it as proof that people don't truly understand you. That reinforces the belief that revealing more won't help, so you reveal less. The less you reveal, the more others perceive distance. The cycle validates itself. You may even take pride in it. You're the rational one, the composed one, the one who doesn't overreact. And compared to people who are emotionally impulsive, you do appear stable. But stability and suppression are not the same thing. One is grounded regulation, the other is guarded contraction. Consider another layer. Emotional intimacy requires co-regulation. It requires allowing someone else's nervous system to influence yours. For a system trained to self-regulate alone, that feels destabilizing. Letting someone see your uncertainty means temporarily relinquishing control, and control has become your anchor. Without it, you fear drifting. There's also an identity preservation mechanism at play. Over time, you have built a self-concept around being self-sufficient. If you suddenly expressed need, desire, jealousy, or fear, it would contradict the narrative you've maintained. That contradiction feels threatening, so you unconsciously filter out behaviors that don't align with the image. People assume emotional coldness is apathy. In reality, it's often hyper-awareness.
You track micro shifts in tone. You detect subtle changes in energy. Your nervous system scans for inconsistency. But instead of responding outwardly, you internalize the data. You retreat slightly. You observe. You wait. The metaphor that captures this best is a castle with immaculate walls. From the outside, it looks impenetrable and serene. What no one sees is that the walls were built brick by brick after every previous breach. Each disappointment added mortar. Each betrayal raised the height. The castle is not built out of arrogance. It is built out of memory. And memory shapes physiology. Studies on attachment patterns show that individuals with avoidant tendencies often exhibit reduced outward emotional expression but heightened internal stress responses during intimacy-related tasks. In other words, you might look calm while your body is bracing. You mastered the art of appearing unaffected. But here is the uncomfortable pivot. What protected you then may be isolating you now. The same walls that block chaos also block warmth. The same detachment that prevents humiliation also prevents depth. When someone attempts to move closer and you subtly step back, you experience relief, but you also reinforce aloneness. The system works perfectly for short-term regulation and poorly for long-term fulfillment. Around 70% of this pattern is protective. The remaining 30% is cost. The cost is misunderstood connection. It is partners who feel shut out. It is friends who stop trying to reach deeper. It is the quiet frustration of wanting to be known, yet resisting being seen. It is the paradox of craving intimacy, but distrusting it. You might tell yourself that most people are simply too emotional, too demanding, too unpredictable. And sometimes that's true. But sometimes your threshold for vulnerability is calibrated so tightly that even healthy closeness triggers withdrawal. The problem is not that you don't feel, it's that you don't permit sustained exposure. There's a moment in many of your relationships where things could deepen. A conversation turns slightly more personal. Someone asks a question that touches something real. You feel the flicker of risk, and instead of stepping forward, you pivot. You make a joke, you change the subject, you intellectualize, you survive the moment, but you also lose it. The deeper challenge is this. If you allowed someone in and they mishandled it, it would confirm your worst expectation. So you preemptively prevent the experiment. This keeps your worldview intact. It also keeps your loneliness intact. Emotional coldness is often misdiagnosed self-protection. But self-protection, when rigid, becomes self-isolation. The nervous system that once shielded you from instability can calcify into chronic guardedness. Over time, guardedness feels normal. Openness feels foreign. Here is the reframing that matters. Your detachment is evidence of sensitivity, not its absence. You built control because you felt deeply enough to need armor. The goal is not to dismantle the armor recklessly. It is to recognize when you are wearing it unnecessarily. Security is not the elimination of boundaries. It is the flexibility of them. A secure system can open and close. It can reveal and retract. It can tolerate temporary discomfort without interpreting it as danger. That flexibility is learned gradually, through repeated experiences of safe connection that contradict old imprinting. You do not need to become emotionally explosive to prove you are not cold. You need to experiment with calibrated exposure. Small truths, slightly longer eye contact, admitting mild uncertainty instead of defaulting to competence, letting someone sit with your real reaction before you neutralize it. You are not broken, you are patterned. Patterns can be observed. Observed patterns can be adjusted. The first shift is internal honesty. Not I'm just independent, but I feel safer when I'm less exposed. That distinction changes everything. When you notice yourself withdrawing, pause. Ask whether the threat is real or remembered. Ask whether the castle walls are protecting you from present harm or past echoes. Awareness alone begins softening rigidity. You don't struggle with feeling, you struggle with allowing yourself to be felt. And if any part of this felt uncomfortably accurate, that discomfort is data. It means the pattern is visible now. Visibility creates choice. Choice creates change. If you want more conversations that articulate what you've experienced but rarely heard explained, stay close, not because you need to be fixed, but because understanding yourself at this level changes how you move through every relationship that follows.